There we go.
So
There you are.
we've identified 5 areas within the Act that the city is eligible to utilize funding for and anticipates utilizing the funding for. And those are responding to COVID-19 public health emergencies, addressing negative economic impacts in our community, helping neighborhoods disproportionately impacted, which for the purpose of this funding is described as downtown, Morningside, and West Side. And then 4th, offsetting the loss of local government revenue and investing in water and sewer infrastructure. There are 2 areas that are eligible under the law, which one we made a decision not to utilize, and that is to provide premium pay to those who had worked on site during the pandemic. And then the other is one we are not eligible for, unfortunately, which is broadband expansion. Ted, next slide. Key dates to keep in mind as we go forward with this funding are that the funding, as I mentioned, was received in 2021, half of it, and another half arrives to the city in 2022, late spring. All of our funds that we receive must be obligated by the end of 2024 and must be spent by the end of 2026. And one of the points that we're constantly reminding ourselves about and have to take into consideration when we're looking at investment consideration opportunities is that this is a one-time source of funds. Ted, the next slide. So we are holding this stakeholder series of briefings because we anticipate in January that we'll be issuing one or more invitation to apply for funding. And we wanted to give you and others throughout the community the opportunity to begin to think about that process and what you might be interested in applying for. Now, and those, the invitation will be structured to offer opportunities in 5 different areas. The first being childhood development and youth intervention, including funding to daycares. And we would anticipate at this point in time that potential types of proposals would address COVID-related upgrades, facility expansions, or programming. The second area is mental health and substance use disorders. And we have identified 3 possible areas of funding: staffing and or training, programming, or facility upgrades and expansions. And when we're talking about facility expansions or upgrades, it's those related to mitigating the impact of the pandemic, such as HVAC systems. Third is disabled, elderly, and veterans. 4th is community-based initiatives, and that will be the topic of our 5th session tomorrow afternoon, to put community navigators in our community to help residents navigate the various programs and opportunities in public health, housing, and or economic development. Capital investments, for example, in new affordable housing or upgrade of affordable housing. Programming that would help address social determinants of health, and community outreach to help identify further needs in the community and guide future funding proposals. And 5th, the focus for today is on community organizations. And based upon the conversations we've had with many of you up to this point, we envision those proposals focusing in one of 3 related areas: community-based programming, job training, and COVID-related capital improvements. Now, for the cultural area, there is also one other activity that we are undertaking at the moment, which is we had also heard about the potential role that the city could have in helping you advertise and market your cultural attractions and tourism attractions throughout the community. And so you probably have heard from Roger Mattis, who is helping us gather information so that in January we can, towards the end of January, we can develop a strategy to help with community and cultural marketing in 2022. So these are two separate opportunities. The advertising and marketing is one that we will be putting together for everyone's benefit. And here is an opportunity for you as an individual organization to apply for funding through us. So the eligibility criteria, the U.S. Treasury has identified specific eligibility criteria and categories of uses that are eligible for ARPA funding. And we are encouraging everyone to review these in detail. They are posted on the city's website on our ARPA webpage under ARPA investments. And they identify every project that we fund has to fit in one of these, at least one of these categories. And they're broken into several groups. First being public health, which is where our mental health services come. It's where our continuing efforts at contract tracing is being funded from. And then the second category is negative economic impacts. That includes assistance that we might provide directly to households, job training, which may be something we want to talk about with you all. And you'll notice 2.11 is aid to tourism, travel, or hospitality, and that includes cultural organizations. So that is, in terms of proposals, we anticipate many of your proposals will fall into that category as well. And then the third area is services for disproportionately impacted communities. As I mentioned, Treasury has defined for Pittsfield that our disproportionately impacted communities include the West Side, Morningside, and downtown, and as well as other specific populations that were particularly vulnerable and severely impacted by the pandemic. In this category, there's educational assistance services, healthy childhood environments, such as our child care services, housing support for affordable housing, housing support for services for unhoused persons, and social determinants of health, such as the living in an environment that is less than healthy for our development. And there's particular, and you'll see the community health workers or benefit navigators in that category. Then, as I mentioned, the fourth category was premium pay. We at this point are not anticipating funding programs in that category, though if you feel strongly about something that falls into that category, but don't hesitate to contact us about it. But at the moment, we have found that that is not an area we're going to focus our funding on. The fifth is infrastructure. And the mayor has already announced the use of some of these funds for the upgrading of the Ashley treatment facility. And those are the type of projects that would fall into this category. You will see again the broadband. While we can do individual projects that would fall into the other categories that address internet access, as far as building out a broadband in our community, whether we like it or not, we don't have, our service isn't bad enough to qualify for being able to be used for those types of areas. Revenue replacement, we can use for the provision of government services. For the first 20 million, the mayor has minimized the amount of money that we anticipate spending in that area. And then of course, there's the administrative expenses, including the monitoring and evaluation data analysis of the investments that we made. Thank you, Ted. If we can go back to the PowerPoint. So with the help of the Mayor's Advisory Council, we have developed a set of investment principles. And as of yesterday, these were finalized and have been posted on the ARPA webpage. We would encourage you to study them, as well as the Appendix 1 as you're thinking about potential projects, proposals to submit to us. And it begins with a guiding principle for our overall investments, which states, when invested in people and places through shared community engagement, the American Rescue Plan provides a once-in-a-lifetime infusion of funds that can transform Pittsfield into a city of social and economic resiliency for everyone, especially for people who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by racial inequity and generational poverty. And a city where people are able to live up to their greatest potential, achieve prosperity, and experience health, well-being, and joy. So to complement this guiding principle, 6 goals have been established, and we would look for projects to help us achieve one or more of these goals. And they are striving toward ensuring city residents have a comfortable, safe, and dignified place to call home, creating safe and healthy neighborhoods supported by quality infrastructure, access to affordable childcare, and opportunities for job training and financial security. And third, enhancing community access to public health, mental and behavioral health, and youth services. And fourth, strengthening and engaging community partners to increase community access to services, housing resources, and economic opportunities. Fifth, supporting creativity, the expression of culture, and artistic excellence so that everyone has access to the arts and an opportunity for self-expression. And finally, building the power and voice of lower-income people and people of color so that all residents share in the future of our community. To that, we've identified 5 potential investment strategies that we are looking for proposals to help us achieve our goals. And the first is to prioritize investments serving historically underserved residents. The second is to support entrepreneurs and small businesses with emphasis on businesses owned by people of color and immigrants or located in Morningside, Westside, or downtown. And third, to support community initiatives and leadership. Fourth, to improve the city's public infrastructure. And we are looking for to invest in projects that are transformational and or enhance our resiliency as a community and as organizations to address future pandemics and challenges we may face. We've identified 8 criteria which will be weighted and used in evaluating proposals. The first is that the applicant is located in or serves the Morningside and or Westside neighborhoods, or is led by or primarily serves people of color, immigrants, the disabled, or veterans. The second is proposals that foster partnerships and collaborations. And we can't say that enough. While it seems as if on the thinking about it, that this is a lot of money, we know our needs in our community far exceed the funds that we have available. And so we are encouraging organizations to partner together and collaborate on different initiatives. The third is proposals that target investment in or to residents of Morningside, Westside, and or downtown, including people of color and immigrants. Fourth is one that addresses a physical, such as housing or social determinant of health. The fifth is a one-time investment. Is it a one-time investment, or can it be reasonably expected to be financially sustainable by other sources once our one-time sources ended? The sixth criteria is brings a new component to an existing program or introduces a new approach to addressing an identified community need. We heard throughout our broad community input this fall that this is transformational money, that once in a lifetime, as our guiding principle says. And we're really looking for new ways that we may be able to address some of our needs. The seventh is that the project addresses a need that is supported by community-based data and or community engagement. And the eighth is that the project addresses an identified and documented systemic gap or flaw, not flow, in existing policies, programming, or program delivery to target underlying, and that it targets underlying inequities. So for the next slide. So the next steps are, we would encourage you to frequently look at the ARPA webpage for updates. As I mentioned, all of the information I just provided was in terms of our guiding principle all the way through our evaluation criteria, was posted yesterday on the ARPA page as investment guidelines under ARPA investment. And this will help you in terms of shaping any thoughts you have about providing a proposal to us. Our formal invitation for funding proposals is anticipated to be released in early January. And we want to give everyone an equal chance to put something together. So we will begin accepting applications 30 days after we release the invitation. And this will be a rolling application process with the first set of decisions, assuming we get applications after that 30 days, 30 to 45 days after submittal. So what we'd like to do now is open this up for discussion about some of the ongoing pandemic challenges you are facing, what your recovery needs are, and any questions, suggestions, or observations. We are just in the process of putting these invitations together, and while our prior community engagement has informed this process, as well as one-on-one conversations and input from the Mayor's Advisory Council, we know there's many things that you are facing that we're not aware of. So we want to hear about those now. And so how we'd like to structure this discussion is if you will raise your hand, either Ted or I will see you and we'll call on you. And again, thank you for being with us today. So who has the first comment or question?
Hey, Deanna, it's Nick. I just want to say thank you. Looking at the guidelines that you've prepared, and you and the committee, and also the criteria, I know it probably wasn't an easy task, but just at first blush, we really appreciate the fact that you've made the criteria as flexible and as broad as you can, given the fact that you can't possibly anticipate every individual organization's specific needs. But just a quick reaction is just to say thank you. Good job.
Thank you. I'm sure it will continue to evolve. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, okay, wait, hold on.
Okay.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, so John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just I wanted to echo what was said before. There's some things that really stood out. I like that there was an emphasis on underserved communities and things. I like this ideal of new approaches and innovations to problems. Can you give me a little bit more about, like, what does that really mean, and how can we approach that if we're trying to apply for proposal process through that?
Well, for the most part, we're hoping you'll help us determine what that means. We have identified there may be terms or phrases that raise questions, as you're aware, John, and others are aware, we frequently in our roles say, if only we could do it differently.
Yeah.
The way we're doing it doesn't work. So here's an opportunity to propose something, a different way to do something. And
yeah, I'm excited about that, because, you know, Reset's a company that thrives in innovation, and so I'm kind of looking at representing from that side, you know, just from the work we did with the the learning management platform and education with E4All, like a good collaboration, and then using that online education system as more innovation for skills-based education. I think there's a lot of opportunity for funding in that space, and especially around resiliency and recovery. So is that like a good example?
That is.
Awesome.
Other questions about terminology that we've used, what we're looking for, how we're going to go about evaluating, or anything like that?
Yeah, like is the evaluation on a point basis, or is just based on the criteria that you listed?
The criteria will be weighted, and so there will be points, and there will be a team of folks evaluating each category of proposals. The legislation gives the mayor the authority to make the final decision. So those teams would compile their perspectives and submit them to the mayor through Gina Armstrong and I, who are co-managing the ARPA program. Brandon, I see you have your hand raised.
Hey, Deanna. So question is, it is a lot of money, but it's not as much money as we all think, because I could spend $41 million today. What is the plan to kind of spread out? Do you recommend everyone getting applications ASAP? Because I know it's supposed to last a couple of years. Is there a plan to only spend X amount per quarter? Make sure you don't spend it all the next first 4 days. Like, what's the plan? And should we anticipate applying now, applying in the fall, applying throughout the 2 years? Or do you recommend everyone get your request in ASAP and y'all will sort out how to spread out the funds?
Well, we are structuring it as a rolling application process because we understand everyone's needs and ability to pull together proposals at the same time. Aren't the same, I mean. We are working with the first 20 million, and in the investment guidelines, you will see the current vision in terms of how we would anticipate allocating that 20 million within the funds that we have already received, that 20 million, or within the categories of eligible uses. And you'll also see the mayor has, based upon our knowledge of many projects that were ready, or a number of projects that were ready to go, there have been some initial allocations made to allow projects that were time sensitive to move forward. So you'll be able to calculate how much we're going to have left and get a general sense, at least as we see it today, how we would anticipate dividing those up. We wanted to give you as much flexibility as possible. So we have not set maximum amount of funding available other than the 20 million. And we have not set maximum dollar value per application. But we are going to be looking, as we're evaluating proposals, to serve as broad of a range of the community and needs as possible as well. And I guess you've asked quite a good question, because I can answer it in a number of other ways too, which is we're also going to look and see, are there other sources of money available that you could have tapped for this, for your need? So that's why keeping track of some of these other state and federal programs can be equally as important. And then are we leveraging other sources of funding? So those aren't on the part of our core evaluation, but will be things that we'll be looking at.
Great. So if we come up with a really great idea that's going to take us 9, 10, 12 months to sort out, we don't need to feel like, oh, if we don't have it in by February 2nd, it's all gone. You want us to, the leading question is, you want us to think about how we could serve the community over the next 2 years and serve the community together, not just how quickly can we get numbers and an idea to you.
That's true. And I would remind everyone that we'll have a second 20 million.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
I can't believe this group doesn't have any other questions.
I suppose I do have a question, Deanna. This is the cultural organizations community stakeholder group. But what if a cultural organization wanted to take on a project that is outside of what we traditionally think of as sort of, we're holding an event, or we're putting on a showing, or come and see our gallery. What would you suggest a strong application would look like in such an event?
So I'm probably not going to completely answer you, Kamar, because I don't want to presuppose what an application might look like. But I would identify that we are seeking proposals that are community-based, and we're seeking collaborations with other organizations. So we would encourage the creativity, and a number of the organizations on this call have demonstrated their level of creativity in the past for programs, and seek out partnerships. And just for the full transparency, and Kamar is used to this since I've done this 3 other times, I want to identify that Kamar is joining us here of his personal interest, but he is also one of 9 members on the Mayor's Advisory Council.
I suppose I have another question, Deanna. I'm recalling during the community listening sessions in August, a question arose at the Liechtenstein Center about how cultural organizations were allowed to use these funds in an unrestricted manner. I believe that was the question, is that they had access to this funding. It was unrestricted, as specifically because it was in the sector of the economy known as tourism.
We're not able to provide unrestricted funds to anyone. They will have to be project specific, and there will be reporting requirements and performance measures, as well as monitoring to achieve those performance goals that you set over time, and that you achieve what you set out for in terms of our goals and strategies, and our guiding principle. So I think you may be thinking about, and Nick was part of this, there was a suggestion that perhaps we turn over a certain amount of money and let the culturals decide amongst themselves how to allocate those funds. And that's something we've communicated to those that were involved with that, is we don't feel comfortable given the accountability and reporting requirements that the city has. So we don't want you all to compete with each other, but yet at the same time, we feel we have to remain as the project decision maker. Does that answer it, Kamar?
Yeah, maybe I'm misremembering. I'm full of questions, so if no one else has questions, I'll just keep going.
Let's see.
Someone else has to have questions, right?
Well, Deanna, didn't you also ask us talk about our different needs as culturals?
I'm sorry, didn't.
Wasn't one of the questions, you also wanted us to talk about our different needs as culturals? Maybe that would be, because you kind of tossed a bunch of questions at us. Maybe that's a good way to start breaking some of this down.
Yeah, I would appreciate knowing what the greatest challenges are that you're facing right at the moment. Brandon, do you want to start with that?
I will turn it over to Honorable Maggie LeMay, who's just on screen, who's our general manager.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi, Deanna. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this. It's really very informative. And actually, before I go on to that, I would say that all the information that you had in your PowerPoint was great, and I can't write that fast. So is it possible to get copies of the PowerPoint or your slides or something? Because there was a lot of information there.
It's all contained in our investment guidelines in terms of the guiding principle all the way through to the evaluation criteria.
Great.
And there are also on the ARPA page, there are the general presentations that were used this summer that go through the basics about ARPA. And then finally, the Appendix 1, which is going to be all of our Bibles in terms of eligible uses, is also on the webpage under ARPA investments.
Okay, great. So we can get all that from the website. Great.
You can.
Terrific. I would say specifically something I think that I would speak for just for Barrington Stage right now, as far as ventilation is, I would say that that's probably a big challenge for us right now in one of our facilities. One of them is terrific, and we've been up and running now for a while. So, but we do have two venues, and one of them needs definite upgrades in ventilation. Now, the difficulty of what I can see with just the timeline here is that we need to jump on it now to be prepared. These things take a long time, and even right now with supply chain difficulties and with labor shortages and all of that, looking at a project of the size that we would need to attempt at one of the theaters would take us between probably now and when we would open in May to achieve. So timeline wise, if you were to send in a proposal for something like a project that was that needed that amount of time to accomplish, would we send that to you right now and see how quickly we can turn it around? Or is that something we would have to wait and see if it were approved down the line? Everything, we want to do everything overnight, right? So
This is a challenging one. We do realize the immediacy of some of the needs, virtually all of the needs. And you're welcome to use the ARPA email that we have to give us a preview, but we really don't want to get bogged down right now in terms of reviewing those as much as we want to get this invitation out, because we know how immediate and critical the needs are. So what you can advocate for is faster than a 30-day opening of accepting proposals. And we will do our best to get the invitations on the street as early in January as we can.
And I ask clarifying there, can the funds be used for something that's money's already been spent on it? So if we say we've already spent $20,000 on upgrading the HVAC system to meet union needs, and then we get the funds, can the funds only be paid on expenses going after the award has been granted, or can be used retroactively within the granting period of ARPA?
That's a very good one, which I don't have an immediate answer for. Since we are required to undertake a contracting process that looks at several factors within your organization, I would say there could be some risk to trying to include cost before an award, but after March 12, 2021. But definitely those investments you've already made could be shown as leveraged other sources. And we'll have to do some more research. And we are anticipating beginning to compile a fact sheet and including defining some terminology, and such as John asking us about new approaches. So this one will definitely be answered in a fact sheet we'll put on the website. So I'm giving you a non-answer again, but that's a good one, a very good question.
Deanna, I have a question to piggyback on that a bit. Again, thank you for bringing us all together and answering our questions like this. It's so helpful. My question, I have two questions actually. The first, wondering if a lot of these larger capital improvements, we would need to have studies done before we can even get, a quote. Would those types of studies be eligible for these types of the ARPA funds?
Yes, they are. Yes.
Great. And then did you say anything about matching funds? Do we have to match these funds?
There is no requirement for matching funds. However, our ability to leverage other sources with our investment is always beneficial. As is knowing that you're watching the other federal sources. Now we can't match one source of ARPA money with another source of ARPA money. So that is one restriction we have.
Okay, thank you so much.
So from some of our other, just looking here at some of the other organizations. Nick, did you have any of that type of questions? Or what are your greatest needs, I guess, was where we were going. Okay, he may have stepped away.
Sorry.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, that's okay. No, I think that most of the specific kinds of things that we would be interested in, we covered, at the Liechtenstein Center. So just looking quickly at the way you've constructed the guidelines and I think we're satisfied that what we would want or need to do would certainly comfortably fit in any one of several categories.
Anyone else that's on? I'll pick on one other person so Nick doesn't think I'm just picking on him. Peter, did you have anything specific related to any of those cultural activities you're involved with at Berkshire Lightscapes?
There we go. No, I think you've covered the guidelines. I think in terms of Lightscapes, we would certainly like to continue to expand the program, whether it's eligible or not. I know we've had some initial discussions, and I'm hoping that in some way it might be eligible so that we could light up a few other targeted buildings downtown.
I've been struggling a bit as to whether or not that would qualify. And I think if it was done in a way that it partnered with some of our other organizations, it might, and community-based organizations, it might, so trying to catch two goals. But the challenge will be, I need you to really focus on that eligibility use categories to see how, and from your perspective, you would see they would be able to fit in.
Okay, we will continue to explore that based upon the criteria that you've outlined today.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah. One of the first things the invitation will ask you to do is to identify which use category you believe your project falls under, and any other of the use categories you think it might also fall under. So that Appendix 1 becomes a very important tool as a starting point.
Hey, Deanna, is there a preference by the panel over how to put reviving old programs that maybe went away because of COVID, or enhancing current programs versus new initiatives, something new and exciting? Is there going to be any form of preference over reviving, maintaining, or creating something new?
So as I mentioned, there is a criteria that looks at a new component to an existing program or introduces a new approach. I think I described earlier today to someone, we're always talking about if we just could do it differently. This is an opportunity to do it differently. And so there is a criteria that give you credit for that. But if you can also, based upon community-based and audience-based information, identify a clear need within the existing programs, we will respect that.
Okay, excellent. That very, very much helps. Thank you.
So Kamala, did you want to ask one question?
I was just taking up white noise. I am happy to hear from everyone on the call.
There are a couple of you I don't know as well as others, so I don't want to single you out. But if you feel you've got the information you have now, we can end this and not take up any more of your time. We would encourage you, as you have questions, to feel free to send those to ARPA, ARPA@cityofpittsfield.org, and either Gina Armstrong or I will get back to you. And that's particularly true if you're looking for opportunities to do something new and you want to really test it out as to criteria, or if you're looking at that Appendix 1 and are having difficulty determining which category. So that'll help you as well. And then as you're looking at these, keep in mind what kind of data you'll be able to report to us during your use of the funds, and what metrics you would want to be judged or evaluated on, because the Treasury is looking very seriously at those types of process, and we'll be reporting quarterly and have already started reporting quarterly to Treasury on our use of the funds.
Deanna, a question about where the funds can be spent. Because this is ARPA funding coming to Pittsfield, do our community partners and any organizations we work with who receive the funds need to be also in Pittsfield? So we can partner with someone down the street, but can we partner with someone and maybe find a great organization we want to partner with? Maybe we want to partner with CATA in Great Barrington. Does all the money need to stay and be spent in Pittsfield, or can it trickle out a little bit?
My first response to you, another very good question. The funds are for the people of Pittsfield and the community of Pittsfield. So if you are shaping a program that you're going to offer to those in Pittsfield who may not normally get to experience your organization's offerings, or to foster creativity in our neighborhoods, we would consider it, as long as we were able to measure the number of Pittsfield residents that benefited from that. If it was to serve everyone in the county, we would consider assisting with your work with Pittsfield-based residents. And we would be looking for you to have other funding sources to assist those from other communities.
Hey, Deanna, just quickly on that, what we're looking to expect in January and in the application process. So I'm just assuming that the categories that have been created are not mutually exclusive, that in fact, when we indicate to you, this is the project, it could satisfy more than one of the guideline categories and be in furtherance of more than one of the goals that you've set forth.
That is true. And we've structured the evaluation weighting so that if you achieve more than one of the, if your proposed project is addresses more than one of the strategies, you would actually get additional points. And we will be asking you what one or multiple goals that you would be helping us achieve. And we don't, some of them, as many of you may know, one of the mayor's initial awards was to Assets for Artists. And we did some of those, we wanted to get them here quickly. We also wanted a guinea pig, as I've told them. So as we've worked with them, we identified, I think it was 4 different eligible use categories that their work could fall into. And so we then decided how best to categorize them based upon the performance data that could be gathered. And we haven't talked much in this time about creating career paths, building workforces. But I would definitely, knowing, having talked with many of you, don't overlook that category either. Does that trigger anything else for anyone? Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you very much for taking this time to talk to us. And again, keep watching the web page. We will be actively, that will be a very dynamic web page over the next couple of months. We will also do other advertising to let you know when the invitation is available. As early in January as Gina and I are physically able to accomplish. And please, in the meantime, take a look at those, that Appendix 1 and the investment guidelines. And have a great day. Oh, and use the ARPA email for asking any questions. We're open always to hearing more about questions. Thank you.